Lululemon stock is down 57% this year. Lululemon doesn't represent anything anymore. It's boring. There's no difference in market.
Our clients should pay attention more to what Chip Wilson did than to what Lululemon is doing today in terms of lessons learned, because our clients are building things. The big corporations are just managing things to try to extract more value before the brand dies.
AI is desperate to please, makes things up on the fly, and tells everyone what they want to hear. That seems a lot more like client services to me.
AI is perfect for these corporations that don't want to take a risk.
It's going to get interesting. Dior changed its logo. A new creative director, Jonathan Anderson, brought back the original logo, but without the Christian first, going back to Dior.
You guys might not agree with Donald Trump, but one thing he knows is how to brand, right? And if
best.
And if you don't want to learn from somebody who is successful because you don't like them, you're limiting your growth potential, which in the end can be making, maybe your employees can't pay their mortgage.
We're not studying from the people who are killing it because we want to think we're better than them. We want to live in this theory. No, but not we don't actually want to think we're better than them, but we want to live on our moral superiority of there's nothing that I can learn from an OnlyFans porn star. What a brand, what a brand, what a brand, what a mighty good brand. Say it again now. What a brand, what a brand, what a brand, what a mighty good brand. Welcome back to another episode of Art of the Brand, the #1 branding and marketing podcast in the world.
If you like the podcast, please share it, follow it, like it. We want to get in front of more eyeballs and change the world of branding and business strategy.
Even if you just send it to someone that you like, just be like, hey, I like you. I like this.
This will make you a better person listening to this podcast.
Well, hopefully. I did a lot of prep for today's episode. I'm really pumped. So we're going to go over a lot of stuff today. There's a lot of, it's interesting, but it's also the stuff that plants seeds. Like the stuff that you need to start really thinking about if you're obsessed with branding and marketing and how to propel your brand forward. So we got a lot to cover today. We're going to talk about Lululemon. We're going to talk about AI. We're going to talk about Dior's change in a logo, what that means for kind of fashion at large. We're going to talk about Donald Trump and Bonnie Blue, one of the leading OnlyFans
Stay
stars.
tuned for some deep controversy on that one.
Yeah, we're going to have a lot of controversial topics today. We're going to talk about how my hairdresser doesn't get it. And we're going to talk about this matcha ripoff that I wanted to get your thoughts on. And then we're going to wrap it up with getting you guys to submit the best and worst sports logos, because we've been dying to do a segment on this forever. And we'd love for you guys to chime in. So let's get started with Lululemon. It's interesting because initially I was sent this post, and the concept of the post is that Lululemon stock is down 57% this year. And this woman, Emily Hickey, she asks her teen daughter, who do you want to become when you wear Lululemon? And the basically the post goes on to say her daughter says that she would be nobody if she wears Lululemon, because you just become another person in a crowd. Like, Lululemon doesn't represent anything anymore. It's boring. There's no difference in market. And I wanted to have a great conversation on this. But then the ex-founder of Lululemon, Chip Wilson, purchased a full-page ad in the Wall Street Journal to basically take a hit at his past company. And I think it just really allows us to have a larger conversation for where Lululemon is at present and what brands can learn from.
I love founders, because you can't build anything unless you go against conventional wisdom. You're willing to piss people off. Like, we look at the world through a corporate lens and people think everybody has to be touchy-feelies, but founders are the warriors who get into the dirt and make something amazing. And then the evolution of Lululemon, having it gone public and seeing what the bureaucrats or bean counters have done to it, is a fascinating case study. And it tells me that our clients should pay attention more to what Chip Wilson did than to what Lululemon is doing today in terms of lessons learned, because our clients are building things. The big corporations are just managing things to try to extract more value before the brand dies.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting time that he decided to take out that ad when this narrative online is, like, we've been tracking this for a minute. Like the sound bite on the Skinny Confidential was me ripping apart Lululemon for placing a very overweight woman as their running ambassador, and which made zero sense to the brand. And then I went on, obviously that was a controversial clip, which I stand behind, because if you're a business that's focused on health and wellness. There's no shortage of models that represent health and wellness that you can leverage. But then I went to go actually read his book, like The Little Black Stretchy Pants, and it was one of the best books I've ever read, period. And it's very difficult to cut through the noise because the media loves to rip Chip Wilson apart. But you can't track the death of a megalith like Lululemon as fast as you can tear someone down for saying things that aren't easy to hear.
Yeah, I don't think many people read that book, but they're happy to criticize Chip Wilson because it's an easy runway to condemn him for being not politically correct.
To feel virtuous, to feel better about yourself,
right?
because it doesn't seem good to hurt people's feelings.
And this is what's plaguing society, is that people have opinions that aren't informed. They have opinions that are self-soothing. And you can take a barometer from your friends by asking them questions about controversial issues and see where they're getting their information from. Is there anything that seems informed about it, or are they just regurgitating a self-soothing narrative? We'll talk about that a little later with Trump.
Yeah.
But Chip Wilson, if you haven't read his book, but you have an opinion on Lululemon, it's an uninformed opinion.
Totally.
What Chip Wilson's ad in the Wall Street Journal is doing, I think, is reflecting a movement in society that people are getting fed up with being told what to think. Yep. And you're just supposed to like look at things that make no sense, and then you look at the herd and the crowd and nobody's saying anything, and so you just say, okay, this is okay. But it's not okay. And a few brave people are now stepping up and saying, look, we need to start identifying things that don't make sense. We need to start telling the emperor they have no clothes. We need to stop shying away from the controversy that allows growth.
I really want to get into this. You bring up so many good points. From a starting perspective, that is what makes this difficult territory, because there is a world of theory that we can live in where it's good to be kind. It's good to make people feel inclusive. It's not good to make people feel left out or not a part of. And it becomes really complicated to start separating what makes basic sense, business sense, psychological sense for what humans want, and then what makes you feel good. And they're two very different things. And that's what makes this entire conversation around Lululemon so complicated. Is Lululemon is a masterclass in when you try to please everyone, you please nobody, and you kill your brand over time. And the criticism that Chip Wilson put out there when it came to the leggings, and again, you have to watch the full interview, not the clips that exist online, and read the book. And the problem was that women were buying leggings that were too small for them instead of shapewear. This was pre-Skims. So women were wanting to buy leggings that were 2 sizes smaller than them to like suck themselves in. And because they were buying leggings that were too small for them, not their size, the leggings weren't holding their integrity because they were like chafing, they were being stressed out, and you were getting pilling. And the quality of the material was falling apart because they weren't being used for their intended use type. And the business was starting to suffer because they had this incredible return policy that their stuff would last forever, and you could send stuff back in and they would replace it. And basically, because they had become a public company, Chip Wilson was on the chopping block to go and do this interview to talk about this apparent product failure.
He dared to be honest. And in a business, you need honesty. You need radical honesty in your business in order to create a strategy that works. And so he's seeing profits go down. He's on the board and he says, this is why profits are going down. People are misusing our product, right? It's not a corset where you put your foot on the back and tie it up. Like it's a legging that's supposed to fit you. But how quickly did the vultures jump on him? You know what I mean? In their virtuous.
Well, and that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. He was already having issues with the board. There was already this big push for inclusivity. Again, this was like coming up 20 years ago when a lot of this stuff was really starting to happen, again, especially in Canada, especially on the West Coast. And he got pushed out, and then the company took a hard left and started to try to double down to bring back that woman that was really never their customer. Like they were the first company ever to create activewear made for the female body, like prior to like an active female body. So prior to Lululemon, if you went to Fila or you went to Adidas, they were baggier. They were like kind of like like a little dumpy, like it wasn't a super hot silhouette that complemented the female body. And Chip Wilson looked to surfing and how surf shorts were different than other shorts, and they really complemented the surfer body type that was very specific to the muscles you develop when you stand up on a surfboard. And that's what made Lululemon have such a cult following, is it was the first. It spoke to someone that was really into health and wellness, to meditation. He foresaw a world in which it wasn't just athletes that worked out. It was this woman who was 25 to 41, who was focused on their career, had discretionary income, cared about health and wellness and fitness, was looking at doing like a high impact in the morning, meditation or yoga in the evening, and that woman wasn't being satisfied. And he created this clothing line for that person.
Yeah, like I think we know that story. What I find interesting to me from a parallel, and it's a bit of a military analogy, but for people who are old enough or who have studied the Vietnam War, the U.S. military at that time became incredibly bureaucratic and bean counterish. And so what happens is when you get growth without dynamism, you get a bunch of people who are just being obedient and are feeding the system what it asks for. And the reason why the U.S. got their ass kicked in Vietnam for 8 years from a tiny country is that all of the bureaucrats were just doing the KPIs and the bean counting without understanding what's really going on the ground, what the troops on the ground are seeing and experiencing and fighting. The bureaucratic machine was dominating. And so for 8 years, they waged this war and they were feeding numbers saying that we're winning when they were completely losing. And that's what's happening in Lululemon right now. They're feeding numbers and they're completely losing.
No, it's such a great tie-in, because that was the point of that long-winded story, is that when they took that hard left and they tried to speak to a person that was never a part of their brand target. And that's what so many brands that we see come across our desk, it's what they fall victim to, is that they forget about what their unique selling proposition was. What was their differentiator? What made them unique? Who is their base? When you try to speak to people that you were never initially speaking to in an aggressive way where you're trying to change your brand identity, it doesn't work.
But what I tell founders a lot is leadership is not just direction. So your organization will adopt the metrics you demand. And to go back to that U.S. Army, they were fixated on counting kill ratio numbers. So people started fabricating numbers. People worked towards showing no casualties. Like the whole organization changed its culture to feed what the leadership went. And once you got this kind of woke board at Lululemon, all of the management levels below were reinforcing it, but the numbers are skewed and they're fake, and it starts to take your company in the wrong direction. And I think Lululemon is the point where it's beyond repair. Like I think it's been led off the cliff, and now the vultures are just trying to take out what they can. And this hurts Chip at a core, because he actually really took a risk and built something, and to see it being destroyed by bureaucratic bean counters is very upsetting to him. And he's sending a message for founders to learn from.
Totally. And I want to read actually the first section, because I think it's worth it from a time perspective. So when I founded Lululemon, this is his headline for what he took out in the Wall Street Journal. When I founded Lululemon in 1998, it was built on a relentless focus on innovation, product, culture, and customer experience. We invented a technical product, business model, created a new apparel category, pioneered community marketing, and developed system processes so simple a refrigerator could manage them. By its 25th anniversary, Lululemon should have been a $100 billion market cap company. Instead, its trajectory has declined. Why? Lululemon directors have systematically dismantled the business model and lost employees who held the institutional knowledge that made the company great. Like a plane crash, decline rarely happens because of a single failure. It's a series of mistakes. And that speaks, we talk so often about the brand death by 1,000 cuts. And that's exactly what he's touching on here. And then he goes on to talk about the founder leaving, because founders are integral to the future success of a business.
Well, the brand.
And then he talks about the gapization of loss of creative to merchants, and basically where it's consistent quarterly projections for Wall Street, where like you can't do things with risk because everything has to be so calculated, because they can take no risk when it goes public. And it's such a, like, this document really should become something that your business continues to come back to if you want to be successful for a long time.
Yeah, I'd love to talk, having studied airline safety, like his analysis of the plane crash, he didn't go into depth, but we called it the Swiss cheese model. So when you look at Swiss cheese, there's a bunch of holes on there, but you can't put your finger through the whole Swiss cheese. But if you were to rotate it so all the holes align, that's when you can have a catastrophic error. Like, so there's redundancy on every aircraft. So if one thing breaks, there's something else. But if like 6 things happen over the course of the flight all at the same time, that becomes the storm. And what he's saying with his company is once these clowns took over and they were in this reinforcing self-serving narrative, all of these things started to happen at the same time. And I'd be surprised if he hasn't sold as many of his shares as he could. But, I would be going short on Lululemon right now based on what I'm seeing, because they don't represent anything that's dangerous or meaningful. They're almost a generic no-name.
They're boring.
Brand, yeah.
Nothing about Lululemon is exciting. And there was such a perfect quote online about the Nike Skims drop and how they didn't sell out in a lot of their like core categories. And the underscoring point was that you can't. Like Lululemon's black leggings have become the ubiquitous staple in a female's closet, right? Everybody has minimum 3, if not more. And you can't ride forever on just the staple, because now it's been same with Nike. Like Lululemon can't be out of black leggings. Like if they're out of black leggings, like you don't go back. Right? Mm-hmm. Like you have to be able to rely on there for the base, but it's a boring company. There's nothing innovative coming out. It's not interesting.
The product innovation is a good point, because I was introduced to Lululemon because some guy said, hey, they have great underwear for men. And that was before men paid attention to it. But if you look at their underwear today, it's almost identical as it was 15 years ago. There hasn't been any innovation. So I don't see innovation in their products. You bring up Nike. What I'd love to show at some point some of the old Nike ads, because there's a reason why Nike once was amazing and today is boring as well. I saw an ad on the weekend of this attractive female getting ready for doing something in front of the mirror, and all of a sudden the guy Michael from Halloween is there. And so you're watching this ad, you think it's kind of a horror movie ad, and he's chasing her, and then she gets out of the house, and then he's chasing her, and it just shows her running, and then she just essentially like outruns him, and he collapses exhausted. And it's like that. They almost banned it because people complained about it. But that is advertising that's memorable, that says something risky and dangerous and sets your product apart, because you're willing to do what other people won't do. If you're doing what everybody else does, you don't have a brand.
Chip even in the book talks about how they would kind of do like riskier creatives. Yeah. Like they would make really bold statements. The pants that you end up loving for years were called ABC, anti-ball crushing.
Yes.
And it's like when you become this like public megalith, like one of the big criticisms they had is like this Lululemon Disney collaboration, because it was just disaster. Like Mickey Mouse all over. And they were like, who is that speaking to? Like, who are you bringing in? Like, what is the plan? And so often what business owners are so well intentioned, they're busy, but like they're not thinking about like how mission critical it is to have a clear place in the market. Like no one is safe from it. And it's become way more saturated, way more competitive. And for that reason, it's you can really stand out and be successful if you focus on brand. But if not for brand, nobody is safe, because there's just so much of everything.
No, in today's world, you need to be focused somewhat on disrupting. Like if you're going to come in and break into a market and dominate, you have to kind of disrupt the status quo, and you can't do that by being safe.
Or boring.
Yeah.
So that was
Don't be boring.
Don't be boring. It doesn't work. So next I want to talk about, we were having an interesting conversation this weekend about AI. So in this tweet, he goes, I don't understand why ad agencies are trying to get AI to replace their creative people. AI is desperate to please, makes things up on the fly, and tells everyone what they want to hear. That seems a lot more like client services to me.
You know what it sounds like? Lululemon managers.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
But it's such a brilliant point that there's so much buzz around how AI is going to take everything. But AI is very dangerous in that it is very focused on pleasing.
AI is perfect for these corporations that don't want to take a risk, because it's just going to use what's been said before and then reorganize it into a new form of word salad. But if you're a founder or a business that's trying to grow, you have to be dynamic. You have to disrupt. You have to be doing things that are new. And that comes from humans who have range and creative ability. AI is not going to give you that breakthrough moment. It's going to give you a smorgasbord of what's happened. And that can be safe if you're a big agency serving big corporations. But Rory's insights into creativity are always gold.
I want to have a hot take. Like, AI isn't the best. what makes AI incredible is that it allows you as a business owner to potentially get access to the best people because they have now more bandwidth to take on more clients. But I even took a call this weekend with one of the top podcast editing teams. And because I'm always looking to level up, I'm always taking, calls from these people that reach out. And candidly on the call, he's like, we don't use AI. He goes like, AI is not the best at picking the hook. It's not the best at creating the caption. And they're right. And that's where I'm constantly faced with is like, our team will try this new, whatever, the Opus Clips editor. And like, it's a great tool for, for someone who might be starting out. But when we're in the business of really trying to go viral and to be growing this, because we're the #1 branding and marketing podcast in the world, that's me being funny, you have to use the human mind that has like gone through all of those pieces and like understands the core target and that nuance of what that human mind understands.
It's interesting you say nuance because when I did my master's in culture and conflict, there's high context and low context communications and high context and low context cultures. So North America is generally low context. We say what we mean. Whereas if you go to some areas of the world, they have high context where it's not to the point. It's not direct. There's a lot of social maneuvers behind communications. But when it comes to good advertising and branding, high context is interesting. Low context is easy. And so, you're getting low context from ChatGPT or AI for the most part. You can ask it, you can give it good directions to say, don't kiss my butt, don't, do something dangerous. Like it's a good trigger for thinking, but you need the highly creative human to use AI to generate those creative juices.
AI is an incredible tool, and we've never had something so exciting and so scary at the same time enter into human existence. But truthfully, when I see, like, I'm reading the back of packages for client packaging, and like I can tell it's ChatGPT. When I'm like on a client's socials, or when people have reached out and they want me to audit their page, like it's very obvious and it's not good enough. It's not bad, but because it's a tool that everyone has access, like you need that difference driver. And that's a lot of what we're talking about every week, like to criticize the difference between one brand doing a collab over another brand doing a collab, like Lululemon and the Disney collab. You have to understand that collab doesn't make sense for where you want your brand to go. And that conversation, that nuance, like if you ask ChatGPT, hey, we're looking to grow our business by this %, we have a deal with Disney on the table based on this, this, and this, do you think that this is a good idea? ChatGPT is not going to say no, because also a lot of marketing people are also not going to say no. Mm-hmm. And like, that's the difference, is that you need to be like, it's exhausting, but it's the Olympic difference of making it to the top.
Yeah, we used to say in the military, if you have a yes man working for you, one of you is redundant. So you want to make sure you don't have a yes person working for you, but people want to delegate creativity.
Yeah.
And not everybody is creative when you own your own business, but if you're going to delegate creativity, you can't delegate it to subpar intellectuals. And what I would say to all of our listeners and clients is creativity is probably the most important area of your business where you have to get the top talent you can afford, because the top 1% creatives change the world. You look at Karl Lagerfeld, you look at anybody who is like has that angle, they make the biggest difference. And so you don't want to cut corners on your creative talent that works with you. And too often people are just phoning in the creative.
It's literally the difference.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because when you talk about a brand, that's why I talk about the 3 different levels of a brand, right? A brand, a good brand, a great brand. The bare minimum is having an obsession on consistency and experience. Like that's why, to go back to the Chip Wilson article, like he said, like it was so basic. Like we had developed system processes so simple a refrigerator could manage them. Like once you have a consistent product, once your product is good, it's good every time, you understand those fundamentals to having a business that can be branded differently, which most people listening to this, like you understand that already because you're a shared value. Like we're aligned as people, you care about what you do, you have a great approach. The next thing that you have to be obsessed with is how you show up and how you communicate. Mm-hmm.
No, and what SOPs do in your business when they're done well is it frees up space for creativity, for strategic thinking, for dynamics, right? If you're spending every day, dealing with a mess of daily operations, your brain is unable to be creative. So getting those SOPs is what he did, and then allowed him to be creative and focus on products.
It's actually a great segue into the, my hairdresser doesn't get it
All right, let's do that. That's a good hook. Hairdresser doesn't get it.
So the other day, this woman that I had used to do my hair for an event, we had a really great conversation when she was doing my hair.
It's not Pink LeBlonde. Pink LeBlonde gets it.
It's not Pink LeBlonde. In fact, she's a great person to learn from.
She gets it.
She kills it. She's very good. Yeah. But this woman who had done my hair, like had styled my hair for an event, and I'd met her twice, and she was, while we were sitting in the chair, obviously super eager to learn more about me. She wanted to get the master class. She's like really ready to like level it up. I had like a candid conversation with her because I didn't pick her off of social media. Someone referred me to her, and I wouldn't have picked her based on her socials. I went, and I never do this, based on recommendation because of where the event was. So it wasn't like a convenient location, like a major city where I had a ton of options. Mm-hmm. Fast forward, I see her post on her stories, and I can tell she's like very eager based on the conversation and like wanting to post more on socials. But the post she did on the story, it's her shopping at Aritzia, and it's her asking with a sticker tag, do you want to see what I tried on this weekend at Aritzia? And it's like her trying as an influencer. And it was like, yes, absolutely. And no, not interested. And when I looked at that, I knew that I needed to talk about it on the episode, on our podcast this week, because she's prepared to do the easy work. Like, that's not the hard work, to like set up a tripod and like try on a ton of different houses at Aritzia and like share it with your followers. That's not where she's struggling. Where she's struggling is doing the hard work, talking about her story, her approach to how she does hair, befores and afters of the events, like the stuff that actually answers the who, what, where, why, and how of her business, and allows her to not lose business based on the opportunity cost of the experience I had when I went to her page the first time. I'm
sympathetic and judgmental of this fact scenario. And to put it in context, when I look at social media, I think it's somewhat destructive in that it hurts thinking, because it's very hard for a lot of people to disassociate social media from popularity.
Yeah.
But the human psyche wants to be popular, desperately. And so they look at social media, they see other popularity. And so when we're talking to them about making content for social media, we're not talking about being popular. We're talking about being functional so that you can use it to advance your business interests. But when you see somebody, and it's not that hard to get, but you can see the human psychological drive that her default was, do you want to see what I went shopping for? When she's a hairstylist, her default isn't to say, just to make comment on, hey, why did the woman in Miss Sloan have her hair like that? It doesn't compliment her face. Or somebody who is doing...
Or like have it, like putting up a tripod to record when she's doing the next bridal hair or
like
whatever.
That's a standard, right? That should be the first. But the fact that the human brain thinks, oh, do you want to see what I'm... Like, that type of popularity comes after 5 years of investing in becoming spectacular.
That's when you get to Pink LeBlonde standard.
Right?
Like what exactly.
And then people
your point.
might be interested, but you got to do 5 years of becoming spectacular at something and then sharing your art. Not, you know what I mean? Like my fishing trip, nobody cares. Like
that's the core thing. Is we were listening actually yesterday to the Diary of the CEO episode with Morgan Housel, and there was a great point in it where Morgan goes, you know, when you're 10, you think that the world revolves around you. When you're 20, you think that you're at the center of the world. When you're at 30, you realize that you're a part of the world, and then when you're 40, the world doesn't care about you.
Nobody really cares about what you're doing
when you're 40. And it was such a great salient point to what most people miss on socials. Is there's so much narrative of like build your personal brand and like show up and post online. But the very important point, the asterisk, the bolded, the underscore is it has to be through the lens of what your potential person cares about. And at the level of where she's at, when she really hasn't done social, she's doing the bare minimum. It's to show why she's special, why she's different, and why she's the best person for the job in the context of where she can get business at the current moment. Like, she's a far stretch from a Aritzia get ready with me video going viral and her getting booked all over the world to do celebrity hair. Like, you need to put in a lot of reps on the basics before you're going insane viral between fashion to being booked for hair when you own a local business that can only generate business within a 50-kilometer radius.
It's a great point, but it's sad. Like it's depressing in that it has such a stranglehold on the ego that people think that, because I'm sure if that person or anybody just sat down and said, okay, what would be the best post for my business? It wouldn't be that. But that default to thinking like that is making people waste a lot of money. And that's why your course, the social media masterclass and some of the upcoming products is actually so valuable. I'm not saying to promote it. I'm saying it actually forces people to go through the difficult steps of understanding it disassociated from the popularity metric. It's actually understand how the machine works, so then you can leverage it for your business, but you have this egoic filter on top of it, which is screwing up how most people do social media.
It's what screws up almost everybody on social media is that people can't look at it objectively. Like their ego is so tied to it emotionally because you're so vulnerable to show up online and talk about yourself and put yourself online. So you default to I need to make them care about me versus I need to ultimately care about you. Them,
yes,
right?
It's so well said. That example is like somebody who's got a mechanic shop and wants to get into social media, and he's like, "Hey, do you want to see my bicep routine?" I think it's easier to laugh at a guy in that, but you know what I mean? Like it's the same type of thinking. You're thinking, no, what are your potential customers interested in? How you can solve their problems. So start investing in that.
Well, also too, I mean, it's really not motivating when you look at people in your industry and they have 100,000 and 200,000 and they've got all of these followers and you're like starting out and you don't know where to start. And then you hear us and we're like, put it online, post about it, do content. But what you're not realizing is that they've been posting for 10 years. The landscape was different, you know, like it was in a different spot where you could get more followers at the time. But also they've been doing it for 10 years. Right? Like there's a 10-year lead up period. So there's a point in which, even if you look at our content, like when we started, it was more like we were focused on small businesses, and then we branched out where it wasn't like, we were never really like a brick and mortar stand where we needed to have like rent paid for, you know, on Main Street at the corner. So we were able to build up and to grow, and it takes years of doing this, of practicing so that you can expand that's a part of the game.
Success in many ways in today's world is actually fighting against our natural evolved instincts. Humans have a tendency to overestimate what they can do in the short term. Yeah. So they think, I'm just going to crush workouts, or I'm just going to invest in this or hire somebody short term, and they underestimate what they can do in the long term by a bunch of small wins.
Yep.
And so rather than look at people who have a lot of followers, most of them are bought, you know, the relative deprivation that comes from judging yourself against others, it will distract you away from the fact that you need to have a micro or a small win every day. And if you can get a micro or a small win every day for 365 days, you'll be amazed at where you're at. But if you're just like, oh, I hate this agency, I'll hire this agency, or I'm just going to do, like people, they over focus on a short-term type of effort as opposed to investing in a long-term effort. Just like any financial investing.
You make a great point. There's a plethora of issues that we see.
It's a big word, like marmalade.
It's a big word, but it felt right. There's so many issues that plague people, and you're right. Like the agency jumping is obviously one, but ultimately it comes down to the lack of understanding it yourself. And it's no different than anything else that you do, right? Like think about if it's easy for you to think about like being a mom, you know, like when you're a mom and you're experiencing and you're going through it, it's so much easier for you to delegate or tell someone what to do because you really get it. Or maybe it's in your job. Maybe you are a hairdresser. Maybe you are a lawyer. Like because you're doing the craft, because you're invested, you're in the game. It's easier for you to delegate, to train people, to bring people in, to expand and your brand is no different. When it comes down to like what you're going to get out of it, the longer you stay ignorant and you think it's other people's problem and not your problem, the longer you're going to have an issue. And the people who understood that they needed to start 10 years ago, I don't even want to call them purchased or bots. I want you to realize like you are 10 years late. You are 10 years behind, but there's no reason to not starting up, and for you to also like leave your ego at the door. Like if your first video does 100 views, that's 100 more people than you would have talked to by not doing it. And
and think of it, like how many humans do you talk to in a day?
10 on a busy day.
Like in a real one, but if your message gets heard by 100 people every day for a year, right? That's 3,000 people have heard your message. Like you can change your life.
Comparison is the thief of happiness. Like you can always find someone that's bigger, that has more likes, that has more views, that has more whatever. That doesn't matter. If you're starting out and you're a goal to in the next 6 months or 1 year is to grow your in-person business by 10 or 15%, that's a massive goal. for the 5%. That's a massive goal.
One thing I say to businesses, small and medium, who want to see some growth is set an impossible goal. And it sounds ridiculous, but set a goal that says in the next 6 months, I need to triple my revenue.
Yeah.
And then as an exercise, then write down what you would need to do to triple your revenue. And going through that exercise, you realize how much you can cut to actually get these goals. Like if your goal is to triple your revenue in a year or 6 months, well, then you have to do one piece of content a day. Like it gives you a perspective on what you need to do, because most people are spending time on the 80% of stuff that doesn't produce the results because it's comfortable, and they're not focusing or doubling down on that 20% that produces the results, because that 20% is a lot harder.
Virality doesn't matter. Right? Like virality has a place, it has a role, but it's when you're more established. Like when our content goes viral now, it's because we have 5 years of awareness, of followers, of buildup, and also of all the other pieces where the social speaks to that credibility. Like when I think about that hairdresser, she sees a lot of content online that goes viral for Aritzia try-ons. Aritzia is also having a record-breaking year. Like they're doing fantastic. They're super viral. I understand her brain's ability of like, I want to see that social media works. I want to get a piece of content that gets high view count. But it doesn't make simple sense. Because if you just are going to be another get ready with me video that goes viral, it's going to go viral in a category that's not going to result in business. And it actually messes up your brain more, because then you're seeing all of these numbers and the business isn't translating. And that's why I call it like it takes 6 to 8 months, and like, don't look at the success metrics. If you follow the plan, if you come up with your content pillars, you have a goal in place, you do your framework that you teach clients, the 90-91. The first 90 minutes for 90 days, do the one thing that's focused on the goal that you're trying to get to. If you do that for 90 days, you're going
change your life.
You're going to change your life. And then you will get to viral content. There's a place for viral content.
Like
but
people don't even need to hire
early.
me. People don't even need to hire me if they just did that, but it's amazing how you need accountability for it. But if you can do the 90-91, it'll change your life.
Yeah, take that one thing from today's episode, please. Please. All right. So next I wanted to do a little segue. Really interesting. So it's going to get interesting. Dior changed its logo. This is the age of Jonathan Anderson. Dior is having its moment. It's been on the decline. It's had a lot of negative scandals with, $45 bags that they're selling for $3,000 plus. But everyone's forgot about that. So Dior has gone back. They've changed its logo, but it's not a new logo. It's actually an old logo. And I've read the Dior story, fascinating story, but basically Christian Dior, the namesake of the brand, he chose the Coche font as a signal to French tradition in 1947. And it was originally Christian Dior, like an atelier with his namesake. In 1967, they made their famous pattern, which by 1970s was like quite ubiquitous. It kind of has that like LV monogram kind of feel. And then going into the 2000s, the Christian element of Christian Dior was dropped, and it went to Dior in caps from 2004 to 2025. And now with a new creative director, Jonathan Anderson brought back the original logo, but without the Christian first, going back to Dior. And what's interesting is this comes at a time where there's a lot of reports where we're moving actually away from logos in luxury branding. It's like logos are out, discreet branding is back in. And I wanted to get your thoughts on that, because like almost we saw on all of the runways this year, like Prada has dropped its logo on signature pieces. Hermes is going to the Hermes buckle. Gucci's going to its Gucci bit. You're seeing more and more brands, even Chanel on the runway, move away from its overly branded look.
When I looked at that visual you sent me of the logos, though, what struck me is that how on the right side they all look very similar.
They're all capped,
but it almost shows the kind of conglomeration in that they're getting groupthink.
Yeah.
In a way, whereas in the old ways there was more differentiation. So, I don't know as much about fashion as you do, but like obviously there's trends in terms of where you go, and I think they're sensing that there's brand fatigue or logo fatigue in terms of everybody showing it. So they're probably trying to position themselves as more scarce by going away from the logo, but I don't really know.
Where I'm thinking with this is to go back to that old logo, it actually positions it more as a name, right? Like it's now Dior as a person than this like this faceless company, this conglomerate of fashion. And it's interesting. I'm reading Deluxe by Dana Myers. I want to say it's one of the best books on fashion I've ever read. Highly recommend it. And she talks about, she interviewed Miuccia Prada, who ran Prada for a long time. And there was a huge boom of like the larger the logo, the more valuable the brand was. Because when fashion, high fashion had a massive comeback when women went into business, because there was such a, men would wear custom suits. Men would wear suits to work. Women needed to have workwear, and they had money, and they started turning to these designer brands, and it became a status signaler for kind of the larger the logo, the cool. And that's when you got these crazy Dion van Furstenberg prints on her dresses, and it really became like you had status the more brand aware you were, because that's how women would signal hierarchy in the workplace. And it's clear that now that that's been 40 years or 30 years, we're now kind of moving back to like, now it's become ubiquitous. How do we signal that we have true class and status in society?
It just made me think that at some point in the future, probably because we're talking about it, like men's suits are going to have, you know what I mean, like little Louis Vuitton patterns on it. Like I'm sure.
Well, that's what actually made the Chanel show this year pretty like crazy, is that Chanel has always been predominantly female. They brought in like a whole menswear line with a 200-year-old shirt manufacturer, and it was like actually bringing, because men's fashion and accessories are blowing up right now.
It was always tailoring and fabric, but like in terms of suits, like, but I think a lot of men's clothing at work too, they've gone away from suits. It's more like business casual, which allows you to dive into more brands.
It's really interesting when in the book Deluxe, she talks about how like Burberry hats, like the bucket hat and Burberry stuff, became like the uniform for chavs. Like they kind of like these like white shit disturbers in London is exactly what she kind of describes them as. Yeah. And she's like, they basically like had to fight against that look so much in London, because it was like became like their uniform. Yeah. And then they basically like stopped making the bucket hat and like the ball cap, and then it just started getting like knocked off like crazy, because like Burberry just basically stopped wanting to supply that customer. And like how complicated, and that's kind of where Gucci is too, right? Like Gucci and like Versace, their stuff just became like kind of gauche for like the track suits and like t-shirts that they really needed to move it upstream. So after the Tiger, one of the biggest controversial takes from it is that they're ready to wear, not their like haute couture, was like $4,000, and they're like, where is this customer? But they're trying to invite that customer back because nobody trusts the brand anymore.
Interesting.
Oh, the Charvet shirts. So basically, it was interesting. So today's Substack article, very quickly on it, is basically that like the Chanel show was very controversial. Some people loved it, some people hated it. And what's really interesting is that the CEO of Kering came out, and the owner of the Chanel group, and said runways only represents 20% of our business. So effectively, and what I learned from that statement is the whole point is for people to either love it or hate it. It should never be middle of the road, because it's a calculated risk either way. Like with them having this like super controversial take, they're getting 4 weeks of earned media value, calculated at over $50 million. So Chanel doesn't make the majority of its money on the runway. 20% of its business. They make the money on like the Chanel 25, because like that's what everybody buys, and like, or their beauty counter, right? They make so much money on beauty. So the whole point of these fashion shows is to be ridiculous, is to create controversy and headlines, because it's allowing us to talk about the brand.
Well, they get it, but a lot of the medium small business owners are scared of making a mistake. But like when I worked with one of the most famous trial lawyers years ago, he said any press is good press. Even if you lose, it doesn't matter. People hear about you. They think you're more reliable if they're hearing about you. So don't be scared of controversy for the most part. And they get it. But
no, they get it all the way. And that was why I brought that up, is the Charvet shirts are $4,300. And people are like losing it, because like people really loved the shirts. If you wanted my take, the show really wasn't for me. really wasn't for me. But I'm just such a sucker for the Karl Lagerfeld approach to Chanel. But I do think that a new era is needed in Chanel. It's just the lack of silhouette was not for me. Anyways, the Charvet shirts, they're like a 200-year-old atelier that has made these men's shirts, and seeing that on the runway was one, like, very androgynous, because it goes back to Coco Chanel's roots of, you know, her wearing men's clothes and it like being for both. But it also is controversial because that's a lot of money for a dress shirt.
That doesn't really look that unique.
No, totally. And the point that you just brought up about that's what my article is about this week on Chanel, is understanding calculated risk and understanding where to take risk, because that is how you stand out in the current landscape. And we're going to take a bit of a different approach with this next segment, because this past week I was interviewed actually on CNN to talk about Trump's branding, and it was a really good interview. Probably wasn't the interview that they were looking for, but it was a really good interview, and I wanted to break it down with you on the podcast because it's actually what I think is missing in the current dialogue online for business owners.
It's necessary because when you're actually serving a client who relies on their business to pay their employees' mortgages, to put their kids through school, they actually need people who will be straight with them.
Yeah.
Right. And too many of the service providers are just they're just saying what they think the client wants to hear. And you going on CNN and saying, hey, look, you guys might not agree with Donald Trump, but one thing he knows is how to brand. Right. And if
best.
And if you don't want to learn from somebody who is successful because you don't like them, you're limiting your growth potential, which in the end can be making, maybe your employees can't pay their mortgage. Like you owe it to yourself and your employees to learn from the best. But there has been this trend over the last 10 years to put your politics on your sleeve and only listen to people who share your politics. And what we need to do is get back to the fact that you need to win. And in order to win, you have to study people who do things the best and put the politics aside. And you crushed it on that interview.
Well, there's so much that anyone can learn from Donald Trump and his approach to branding. And because he's such a divisive political figure, people just want to like scoff at him and laugh it off and I don't know what they want to attribute his success to, but he's a messaging and a positioning machine. And that was the whole point of the interview, is that the longer that the Democrats resist what they can learn from him, further away they're going to get from losing that middle, because they're not talking to a large enough base that's going to change, that's going to transform the elections moving forward.
Honestly, if you want to kind of take a barometric measure of the intellect of yourself or the people around you, like ask the question, what can you learn from Donald Trump? Right? And if somebody doesn't agree with his politics, but you ask them that, the intellectual, thoughtful friends who don't like him can still say what they can learn from him, right? Like, because they're open to learning from people they disagree with. But so many businesses are missing key points of growth because they're in one camp only. They're in a bubble getting fed the same stuff, and they're not growing.
Well, there was a lot of questions that she asked me in regards to like basically the different angles that this interview took. And the core premise of what she wanted to talk to me on was the ramp up of marketing and branding initiatives in his second term. Like, compared to the first term, the way that they're branding things has absolutely increased. And I didn't realize that it was more of kind of a guarded conversation of, it can't be him, he has to have a team. Now, the guy does have a team, but the team is the best team. And the guy was also forged in traditional media. Like, he existed during a time where viewership and tuning in, like the amount of eyeballs that you could get on a TV screen, was the difference between generating ad revenue, generating re-signs, generating awareness, especially for like how he could propel the Trump brand forward. And when you have someone that's been forged in that for 40 years, he intuitively understands the shift to eyeballs on social media. Like, he understands attention spans. He understands view count. He understands where to go in order to generate relevance.
Well, he understands what the fashion industry does based on what you said, that wins and losses get you attention.
Totally.
The name of the game is be in the press.
Be in the game.
Be in people's name.
Be on podcasts people are watching and listening to.
And he ignores the outrage police who want to be outraged by everything. And all he is he's just in the game every day. His name is being said.
He's tweeting on social media. Like, he's super, like, but the other thing too that I talked about is she asked me a lot about like things like, you know, the Golden Dome and like how he's like renamed things. And I'm like, what Trump is doing brilliantly is he's approaching his second term like he is the CEO of Apple or the CEO of Nike. Like, he's actually using branding that we see in direct to consumer brands than how you typically see political figures discuss things. And the reason why that's brilliant is the companies that understand persuasion, or the people who understand persuasion at the highest level, are those who need to convince people to buy their product. So the people with the most data, the most at stake, are these huge companies that are generating trillions of dollars, like Apple is, to maintain people continuing to buy the iPhone, even though when you slightly upgrade the camera and make the design look different. Like, they get it the best. So by him basing his approach off of what the top companies do, like him naming things where they're like really easy to understand, he's showing up with simplified messaging and positioning, he's creating things like he's riffing off products based off of other concepts he's putting together. Like, it's a masterclass in how to brand.
He doesn't give a crap about offending the people who aren't part of where he wants to go. And so their outrage actually amplifies his brand. And that's what kind of Lululemon missed. By focusing on fitness and being healthy, if people get angry at you, it amplifies the message that your product is for the fit. Trump names things in a way that he knows gets people upset. They then go and have their little hissy fit, and it just reinforces to the audience that's moving towards him that he's the right fit or the solution. Like, it's brilliant. People are missing it everywhere.
It's so. I'm not asking for anyone to change their politics. I'm actually not asking for you to even see this conversation as a political conversation. I'm seeing that. I want you to see this as a way of, what can you learn to get your brand to win? And that was the best part of this interview with Betsy Klein, CNN reporter. She ends up really trusting me. We have a really good rapport. We have a really good conversation because, and this was the turning point. I said, you know, the number one thing that Trump understands is attention spans and microscripts. And when he started calling his opponents Sleepy Joe Biden, Crooked Hillary,
Little Marco,
there's just so many. But there was this one specific example that Betsy gave me, and it was something like Busy Tim or like, anyways,
Lying Ted.
And as a Democrat, she was speaking to a like lifetime Democrat in like Iowa or Indiana, a state that starts with I. And she said she was talking to this woman, and basically at the end of the conversation, she started asking her, being like, you know, Ted kind of is a liar. I don't know if I really can buy into him. And she was using the language back to her as a really bought in Democrat to Betsy. And that's when Betsy really realized herself that the power of the microscript is really working. And the reason why the microscript really works is he understands that you have a 3-second attention economy, right? So when you turn on the TV and you see the headline, and when you turn it off, you're taking away, because again, it goes back to the point about the hairdresser. People care about themselves. How do you make them seem smarter? How do you give them language that they can process, that they can take on with their lives, so that when they're on lunch break and they're talking with their colleagues, they can contribute to the conversation in a way that's not policy speak. It's not speaking at a university level. It's colloquial. It's easy to understand and to digest. And those names were so powerful because it was truly a microscript. It packed in so much power and meaning into one word in front of their name.
Yeah, like you almost want to make winning great again, not to overuse a phrase, but our society's almost got a little soft where it thinks, hey, look, we don't really have to, winning's not as important as long as you're being a good person, and that's fine. But a corporation that has a monopoly on the market can afford to be like that. But when you're a founder, like, you have to focus on winning. And what Trump and some other people who know how to brand well do, Chip included, is they know who their client isn't, and they're not scared to offend their non-clients.
Yeah.
And actually, by offending their non-clients, and offending is a loaded word, you actually get more loyalty from your clients. And a lot of businesses have to take a risk at kind of staking a claim of what they stand for, who they are, at the risk of pissing people off.
You're so right. And you actually like gave the best point too early, because I also wanted to tie this into Bonnie Blue, the OnlyFans model. Is that what we call her? Probably not, but I'm going to leave it there for a PG audience. But basically, this is a completely separate take, and I'm not comparing the two, but I do want to touch on where you're kind of getting at. And Bonnie Blue was on this podcast called Modern Wisdom. This was sent to us by our good friend Katie, who listens to the show. Katie, you're awesome. And in basically this podcast, they touch on a lot of topics, you know, sex culture, OnlyFans, how she approaches what she does. But there's a really interesting point in the interview where she talks about how she's branded herself, and she intentionally takes brash approaches, controversial headlines, micro scripts that stand out, because in a 3-second economy, she understands that she needs to be top of mind for her customer. And one of the approaches that she takes extremely successfully is starts a lot of the videos of telling women, this is not for them. This is not for you. She's like really speaking to the woman to piss them off, so that the woman goes back all hot and crossed and like complains about this OnlyFans model to their boyfriend or husband, in the hope that the boyfriend and husband then go and secretly subscribes, because her name is now top of mind in an awareness play because of the marketing rule of 7. And if it happens enough times, people are bitching about her enough, she knows that she'll get some subscribers that tune in because they're talking about her.
But it's just also good positioning, because if you say, hey, like, this is not for women out there.
This is not for you.
You should not look at it. It's not for you. It actually makes men want to look at it more, because if it's not for women, then it must have something juicy in it, right? It's like,
why isn't this for me? I want to watch it.
The women who are helping promote her indirectly, subconsciously want to talk about how upset they are, but are indirectly just promoting it so that their partner secretly goes there. But this is why human psychology is important in branding. It's not about virtue. It's about, what does the human brain respond to? If I say to you, don't think of a pink elephant right now, whatever you do, everybody's going to quickly picture a pink elephant in their head. So there's a reverse psychology to how you get your message across, but none of it is related to being boring.
100%. Well, and that, I think that's the through line for this episode is don't be boring, because like it's interesting because, you know, I'm not saying her brand is for me. I'm not saying that you need to go and do that. And it's, you know, it's no different on the Trump conversation.
Because if you told me not to go look at it, then, you know.
You better not. But the point of it is, we're not studying from the people who are killing it, because we want to think we're better than them. We want to live in this theory. No, but not we don't actually want to think we're better than them, but we want to live on our moral superiority of, there's nothing that I can learn from an OnlyFans porn star. There's nothing I can learn from her. You know, there's nothing I can learn from Donald Trump. He's an idiot. You know, like, and we live in these echo chambers of narratives, and you end up copying a Lululemon which on the outside you don't know is failing. You don't know their stock is down 56%. You don't know that over 30% of their inventory is on sale right now, which is a clear sign in retail that you are in hot water. And you end up copying the wrong person, and you end up following in their footsteps, opposed to studying these controversial fringe people that you can learn from. And again, think of all of this as on a spectrum, right? Like, what can you take from what she's doing that's on brand to your brand? That's the way to win. Steal like an artist.
Actually, I think it's a bit of a sickness that's you know, infected Western society, is that there's actually a managerial class that would much prefer to be seen as morally right than successful. Yeah. Right? And it's infected businesses and Twitter channels and whatever. They're not hungry for the knowledge to win. They want to consume knowledge that makes them feel right. And I tell people all the time, you're so focused on being right that you'll destroy your business or your marriage, right? Rather than try to be right every time, right? Why not just do what moves you forward to where you want to go? That's the path to happiness. It's not just circling yourself with people who tell you how right you are and ignoring indicators of success that could help you.
The people with the most power on social media aren't the people with the most power in the real world. Employees and academics, like, they can live in theory land. Like, they can live in this land where your brand will stand out if you don't say anything and you speak to everyone and you don't have a budget and you're not huge and you'll be big, and you can get all of these things by pleasing everyone and doing everything right. But they don't have anything on the line. Like, they don't have a business. They don't understand what it takes. And that's what's so complicated, is there isn't one way to do it, but I can tell you sure as shit, the way to break through is not to be boring. And it's so hard to put yourself in the position of doing something, saying something, putting yourself in these situations of risk or controversy or being really different and standing out. But like, that's the difference to actually win. And if you're not prepared to do that, you're not actually prepared to win, because it's super saturated. And that's the whole point of also what Chip Wilson is saying, is it now doesn't cost anything to come out with copper leggings. There's thousands of companies coming up with leggings that you can, even Lululemon's like technical fabrics, like they paved the way for having the most dynamic new technology in fabrics that we had ever seen. Now that's commonplace. And they're not continuing to push themselves forward, and they're not winning anymore. And it's different to like be an employee and like keep the train moving, to be like driving the bus.
To me, it comes down to agency. Like, a lot of the time your politics will be affected by your agency. If you're an employee in a corporation or a government, you don't have a lot of agency control over your life.
Yeah.
So you exert control through your social posts. Like, you're pronouncing judgments on people, and that's what's giving you agency. If you're running your own business, you have agency in that. You got to make payroll. You got to pay the mortgage payment. You have tons of agency. So then what you want from your politics is something that allows your business to survive so that you can employ other people. And a lot of the people who are living in worlds of pure certainty should ask themselves, why are they so drawn to being certain about things as opposed to being successful?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that there's a topic for another week is really discussing, should your strategy be like, I don't want to say tearing other people down, but sometimes like if you need to compare the difference between different, products, or like what difference between your business versus another one. And the answer is sometimes that should be the strategy. But I think what's difficult for a lot of business owners is like, you don't know, and you're looking for that like absolute answer before you put yourself out there, because it's like, it's hard to be vulnerable. But what's so beautiful about social media is you can actually like sit down and say, I'm really struggling because these are my core 3 differences, for my brand. This is what makes us really special and unique. Do you feel like you know this about us? Do you feel like this is worth me? Like you can do your own kind of like focus group and field research and get that back and decide if that makes sense for your brand. Because that's the thing that is a bit complicated, is does it make sense for your brand based on who your customer is, what is your true point of difference, and how to position yourself properly.
Great segment. Glad we survived talking about OnlyFans and Trump without getting canceled.
The next thing I want to talk about actually is this. One of my favorite brands in the world is called Super Matcha. And it is a Korean matcha brand. And it's one of those brands, to me, the reason why it's my favorite is because it's very bold, it's very different, but it's very simple. And I love when brands do things to actually stand out, opposed to just like hiring celebrities to like make their product seem unique and different. And what I love about Super Matcha is they used such a rich green that like isn't really a matcha green, but it's so obvious when you're walking in a store and you walk down the street and you see it, like, it right away. And it's one of the few brands in my life that has actually made me like stop in my tracks and like really make me look at them and like want to buy them for how it looks. And it's a product that we use almost every day with making smoothies, and I'm really proud of it on my shelf. And I always wanted to do a piece on this for what businesses can learn from Super Matchas, because they're so different, and there's such an obsession with like, what are other people doing in the industry, that I need to conform in order for it to make sense, opposed to for it to to be different.
Yeah, I guess it goes with the name. Like if you call yourself super matcha, like you can't be boring.
It's gonna be the most matcha ever.
Right? So it has to be, like your matcha has to go to 11. We'll see who gets that movie reference, but like that's what they did. And it did stand out. Like we saw that in Korea. I just went into that store thinking these guys are the best matcha, because of everything in the store.
I agree with you. And that's actually why the brand in the end, like why I've loved it. But then look at this. So this company has launched in Toronto, and we were so pumped because we thought for sure that Super Matcha was opening in Toronto, and it's like a brand that I reference literally all the time. But look at this. It's a ripoff. And I wanted to get your thoughts on this. One, as like a lawyer. Two, as a branding expert. Take a look at this. It's called Matcha Matcha, and they're completely ripping it off. I was heartbroken because I was so excited that Super Matcha was coming to Canada. And there's probably very few people in Canada that have that data that I do. But I know that someone knows about Super Matcha and ripped it off.
Can you put the colors right beside each other? Because it seems a tiny bit different.
Well, it's a tiny bit different, but it's like
their font is the same. But, there's not much you can do with matcha. Like you're going to be green.
I disagree.
But it would be nice.
I disagree. Look, they did the exact like block.
Yeah. Of
it being block font. I think there's so much you can do with matcha.
They got white writing. These guys got black.
No.
I admire your love and obsession with Super Matcha. I think it's good, but this stuff happens all the time. Remember, we tell people to steal like an artist, and if they're not in...
this isn't stealing like an artist.
If they're not in
This
Canada,
is stealing like you deserve to be in copyright jail. Look, they even ripped off Gentle Monster.
That's hilarious. But, I don't see a copyright issue there. Like, it's close. But,
So annoyed.
I just don't think when you steal like that, you capture the essence of the original brand.
You don't.
So I don't think it's lacking its own creativity. And if you're just doing that, it's gonna be visible in other elements of your business.
Completely.
Right. So they're not going to have their own personality, but they're taking what obviously worked well on a different continent and just bringing it over here.
I'm not happy about it, and I really wanted you to have a different perspective.
Part of me just doesn't mind that North Americans are kind of ripping off an Asian brand as opposed to reverse.
You're hilarious. Oh my gosh.
So the copyright issues are usually going the other direction. So this one doesn't really alarm me, but
I was just like so upset by it because seldom do I really feel like an emotional connection to a brand because they're just doing such a great job. Mm-hmm. Like I feel like we live in a world, especially in North America, where it's like the brands that we celebrate are the ones that just have the most money to throw at doing just like the most celebrity collabs, the most like even Skims. We got to chat about this. I had like 6 people DM it to me today. I got to show you this. They launched...
But imitation is the highest form of compliment. So
not that one. That was a ripoff. Let's look at this. So Skims today launches this like vintage video and creative looks...
Does the carpet match the drapes? Well, this is not boring.
You knew right away what it was going to be?
Well, it says, does the carpet match the drapes in the back? Like that's an old phrase.
So you get it.
Yeah, it's risky.
Well, wait till you see it. So they have like all these like
looks
70s.
Like the dating game from the 70s.
It's 100% that. Fantastic creative. And basically they came
cool
out
looking people, yeah.
with all of these thongs that have fake hair on them.
No.
Yes.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
I'm saving this because I'm going to send this to Super Matcha and be like, check this out. I'm not okay with it.
But they don't actually show the product.
No, they don't show the product, but I had Tori text it to me. Shout out to Tori Webster. She also has a great podcast. This is it.
Wow. Wow.
But it's like I'm like annoyed that I'm giving it airtime. I've had 6 people send it to me. So 6, a lot of people obviously want our reaction to it, but it's like what they understand is just if you do disgusting things, you will get reaction.
No, but it's costume, but it's also talking about human things. Like what goes on in the human brain is much more complicated and risky than what people communicate to others publicly. And so it's not about what people are telling you is okay. It's actually how the brains are reacting. And this may appeal to people. I'm not aware.
But it's the question that I want to have is like,
Jesus, those things are fucking scary.
They're gross. But it's not. At what point do you do things that are on brand versus do you just do things to viral hack?
Yeah, there's some dynamic creative behind that. I don't see how that supports the Skims brand. Like, it seems more costumey.
It's totally costumey, but that's exactly my point. Is how do you analyze? It's like because we talk a lot about earned media value, right? Earned media value is the idea of if we're all talking about the Chanel runway, we're all talking about Chanel. You know,
but there is, I think, like in the underwear, if you need to get business, like if you're not just making the best underwear, you need to do stuff that creates more interest. And so they've definitely created a new category of underwear.
That's the thing that I struggle with. Like, on one hand, I'm like, everyone is talking about Skims, but I feel like I have not been compelled to buy anything from Skims in the last 6 to 8 months. So is us all talking about these nipple piercing bras and the neck gauze?
It seems like somebody kind of deviant has got into Skims, like at that creative level, because you got the nipple piercing bras and now you got pubic hair on underwear. Like, it seems like a theme that's
someone in that boardroom is like, we've now had 2 crazy viral launches. Where do we keep going? Like, what's the next one? Hairy butt, full bum underwear, hairy back tank tops. Like, where does it, like, that's what they're thinking. It's like, how do we keep riding on this theme of like, it's getting the people going. It's polarizing. They're also gearing up to go public. My only question, though, is like, I think that there is space to do things that are crazy and ridiculous. I do think that they're getting into the territory of it's not making me think of buying anything from Skims.
No, if you're doing that before you go public, to me, it's a bit of a warning sign, because you're actually stretching for attention. Like, you're really trying to get that attention. But generally, when you overstretch, you don't have the foundation for long-term survivability. So, their creatives they're not being boring.
They're not being boring.
But it also has to be strategic.
Even though Nike was kind of boring, like the Nike launch was boring. This is definitely not boring. And you're right. Like, Halloween is coming. I want to use stuff that people can learn from. I think there's a lot that Skims can be doing. Like, when Skims, like a Skims doing like a Love Shack Fancy collab, or like Skims, like, that's just one example, but I think that there's a lot that Skims could be doing to expand its current category and space than needing to do these things to generate attention. Like, when I think about the Skims brand, like, there's so much. Like, I would love like Skims tennis. I'd love Skims golf. I would love like Skims nude.
Skims golf would be interesting.
Work dresses, where they put a collar on their material. Like, to me, there's so much that Skims could do that I would actually want to buy from than be doing these collabs that obviously generate awareness.
But that's not a collab.
Sorry, a drop. Yeah. They were doing a drop that, like, I'm talking about it, but I'm not buying from them.
What they're tying into there, and I don't think they're nailing it, but when people are looking at content, the 70s and the 80s, they told stories, and they were very interesting. Like, if you look at the old clips, the commercials, you can learn a lot from them. And going back and they were always on the border. Like, the 70s was very risky.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think people are hungry for that. It was so much digital media from corporations that's bland. You can get extreme stuff from the people on the outsides, but from a business perspective, they're kind of hungry for something that says something interesting.
I think you are totally correct. I think this is lazy. Like, this is lazy risky.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, there's not a lot of creative there. Like, does the carpet match the drapes is obvious. And then they just kind of make a game show. But you're right. It's lazy in that it's very linear. There's not nuance. There's definitely not high context.
No. But even like I feel like I've said this, but the brand to me has so much space to do things that are interesting, that push the boundary, than doing things that only push the boundary but don't develop the brand. And when we go back to, like, when we talked about how do you do things that are on brand, like, you almost need to, like, get out a whiteboard and, like, you need to start asking questions as if you were being hired for your brand. Like, is our goal? What are we trying to do? Who are we trying to attract? What are their problems? Where is our current gaps in the market? Like, this is moving Skims to being like a Spencer shop, at the mall. That
point you make when it comes to brand, most people don't really know what their brand is. Like, there may be some airy-fairy words, but one of the things you get, like, when you think of cars, when you think of Volvo and you think of Porsche, right? There's immediate sense of what it is,
A total brand feeling.
right?
Total,
One is
yeah.
safety, one is performance. When it comes to your own business or your own personal brand, you want people, when they say your name, to think something very quickly that's easy to digest and understand.
Totally. Well, it even goes back to that idea of like if you close your eyes and you think about the two different hotels,
Yeah.
right? Like the Volvo hotel is priced very differently than the Porsche hotel.
Mm-hmm.
Like the design is very different. You're bringing your kids to the Volvo hotel. You're probably not bringing your kids to the Porsche hotel. Like
Your mistress.
Philip. But it's, you know, they're very different brands. And if you close your eyes and you can't clearly think about a hotel, or if you asked all of the people that work at your company, what is that hotel, and that hotel isn't clear, or they're stretching, or they're really trying to grab at something, you do have a brand problem. And when I think about Skims, like what is that thong doing to that brand hotel? Like when I think about Skims, it's base layers, it's shapewear, it's sleepwear, it's thongs and underwear. But like it's not thongs and underwear that's in the joking category. It's like all nudes. It's the basics. It's the stuff. When we talk about that evolution of like when women got into luxury fashion, Kim created Skims because there was a gap in shapewear and underlayers for females that were not black, that weren't super uncomfortable. Like this whole nude theme is, we even talked about a super high profile podcast host that owns products about this. Like, stop launching pink products. Your customer isn't into pink. We like nudes. Like when women get into their, like they don't want to have 20 hot pink tank tops. They want like different nude variants so that they can reuse them.
You know what popped into my mind before we wrap up is with your hotel example, I'm kind of surprised why Vegas hasn't had casinos that are more brand focused.
So smart, eh?
Right?
Like,
because
why
imagine
isn't there like the Rolling Stones hotel and like the...
I was even just because I was thinking, like, what if there was a Starbucks casino versus a Dunkin' Donuts casino? They'd be different. You know what I mean?
Totally
but like
different machines. Totally, yeah.
Like I would almost think about having like a Tesla type casino. You know what I mean?
Well, that
but
would
like,
be your casino for sure.
No, but
we wouldn't have slot machines.
But I'm telling you that the branding and the feel would be interesting,
Totally.
right? Like, but you know, to be Caesars or Luxor, like they're kind of outdated old type brands that had a feel, but I think people want something more.
You know what's really interesting is that there's more people that go to Vegas every year than Disney World. Like Vegas is the highest grossing destination in the world for tourists because it obviously attracts like a larger age range than like, you know, people.
But when I
kids.
think of casinos now, I just think, oh, one's expensive, one's not. But like the brand of the casino is kind of filtered away, like from MGM to Caesars to
Except when you say
Cosmo.
Wynn, and instantly everyone is like, the Wynn's the best.
Yeah, because it looks the most like Trump, even though Trump's hotel is garbage. But you know, because it's all gold. Like they just went all in.
Well,
on the
it
gold.
actually to me is less that. It's actually the curation of the stores inside. Like having the Earth Cafe there. It's actually so funny that like that premium customer would rather like get smoothies and like an organic sandwich when you're in Vegas. You know, like that's so fascinating to me. And it was always and the response to whenever we talk about the Wynn, it's always like, we got to go to Soul Cycle. So like on Sunday morning, you know, after 2 days in Vegas, like we would go to Soul Cycle. But that so spoke to this like customer that we're talking about, where it's like more like it's work hard, play hard versus.
And you had
like,
the golf course.
And you loved the golf course, true.
At the Wynn, yeah. And now we're happy to rebrand a casino if they need some help.
Yeah, if anybody knows, you know, Tesla or Dunkin' Donuts or Starbucks, you know, we're down to casino it up. But we do want to do a segment maybe next week on best logos and worst logos
in sports. Let's pick a sport. Do you want to do hockey or football?
I feel like football is going to get, you know, how many people care about hockey logos?
All right. So in football, send us what you think are the top 3 football logos and the worst 3 logos, and we will put our 2 cents in. We'll do a poll, and we'll announce what we think is the best and worst.
Sounds good, guys. Thanks for listening to the end here. I hope you have a great week.
Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, share.
Send us when you like.
And stay tuned for the upcoming brand and social media masterclass that Camille is launching. I tell you, I've worked on a lot of products. This is the planner. Yeah, sorry, I meant
physical planner.
It's actually one of the most impressive and dense pieces of product I've ever seen in terms of how it can transform your business. It's coming soon. Pay attention to get on the waiting list.
We actually need some people to give some feedback, be like a little test group. So the people that listen every week, we'd love it for GBU. So just send me a DM on Instagram, and see you next week.
Chill out.
Goodbye.